Alright, welcome to APDesign Visual Tools. This is a continuation of the Louver project. We're going to introduce a little bit more complexity and control over Louver. We were at like a pipe. Well, let's imagine that we don't really want to use tubes for our project, so let's get rid of that and start to look at other ways of representing the Louver. The only thing I've changed really is I changed the orientation of our curves. So now that we're, if we're looking at louvers, we're probably looking at a vertical surface. So I've oriented that differently. Something you want to do. Alright, so let's look at now extruding. So we have now our lines that are going to be our louvers. I'll de-preview the other points. And let's add an extrusion to that. So there's actually several ways that we can do this. One might just move these lines out from the wall and loft them and then extrude them. Let's do that process. So I'm going to move these in what direction? So I'm going to move them in the Y direction. You can see down here at the icons, that's the direction we're going to want to go. So we'll do Y. And we're going to move this line and in the Y direction. Now with the move command, you need to set not only the direction but actually the magnitude of that move in that vector. So I'm going to add another cursor or another slider that's going to control that. So now we can move it anywhere between 1 and 0. And if we need to increase that, of course, we can do that here. Alright, so with that, we'll now loft. You can see me using the screen a lot. I'm double clicking and then typing in the command that I want, and it will bring me kind of what it thinks might be what I'm needing. So loft. And I'm just going to grab this line and hold down the shift key. You'll see a plus sign over the top of your cursor and a green arrow. That means that you now can add multiple things to the same input. Alright, let's take a look at what we have. And what it's done is it's lofted all of those front parts of the louver and then lofted them to the back part. So in Grasshopper, you want to control the information. So let's just take a look at what's happening. I'm going to throw in a panel, and we're going to do the same thing. Instead of going into the loft, I'm going to grab it. I'm going to hold down the Shift and Control keys, and that allows me to take the inputs from there and put them somewhere else. And so what it's doing is it's taking this long list of lines, and then at a certain point it looks like I have 14. So somewhere right in here it's adding then the other list from the move. So it's made one really long list. Well, what I really want it to do is loft this line to that line, this line to that line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use what's called the weave command. The weave command allows you to put and weave together much as if you were weaving thread, and weave them together. So it's going to take that list and weave it with this one. And let's see then what that does. Alright, it's getting closer. What it's doing is it's weaving this line to that line, and then that on the that one. So we're actually getting this kind of accordion effect. Well, what I really wanted to do is just do one at a, these two, and then start a new set, those two, start a new set, those two. So to do that, what you need to do is break down your one long list and graft it. And I can do that in several ways. I can grab this, a graph tree, and I can put it in here, and we'll take a look at what that creates. What essentially it's doing is taking each of those lines and putting it in its own singular list. And I'd need to do the same thing with this one. So then again, we should see a similar kind of structure. And then I'll plug that into here. And I'll plug that into here. And now we get what we wanted. You can do it with a component so you can see it, or you can do it in a different way. You can right click over the output and you can graft it here and do the same thing here. It's up to you. Sometimes it's cleaner not to add the extra component. It all depends on what you're going to do with that information later. Sometimes you need to have it clean structure for some other thing that you might tag that to or connect it to. Alright, so now we have louvers. Now, before I end this video, I want to just go over one other thing. What I've done in the original kind of move is I've given it a very specific direction, and in doing that, I've kind of I've taken out some of its flexibility. So let's say the reason that I might want to kind of not give it such specifics direction. So let's say that these two curves, this curve was actually somewhere else, somewhere like kind of in that orientation. You can see if I go to plan view that it's extruding in the Y, and so in fact it's moving in the Y direction. So it's not really relative to the orientation of these two lines together. It's absolute. It's always going to be extruding or lofting the louver in the Y direction. So I've really kind of dumbed down the script in doing that. So what I'll need to do if I want to get it to be more clever, smarter, is I'm going to have to figure out, what is the orientation of these lines to one another, and then kind of extrude in the direction that's perpendicular to them. So to do that, there's a couple extra steps. What we're going to do is we're going to create a surface that basically lost between these two curves. So I'm going to grab a loft, and I'm going to grab that curve and this one, and we now have created a surface. And what I'm going to do is then look at a point for each of these lines. Say it's midpoint. So this command allows you to run along that line from 0 to 1, so from beginning to end. I'll just set it for halfway. And I'm going to find the closest point. I'm going to find the closest point on the surface. So surface closest point, this surface, this point, and that allows me to get a UV coordinate for that point. What UV coordinates are is basically we have global coordinates, which are X, Y, and Z, but on this object, that surface, that has a local XY coordinate system, and this gives you that local one. And instead of calling it XY and getting confused, they call it UV. So I'll get that, and then I'm going to use this last component called evaluate surface. So for each of these UV, I'm going to plug in surface and that UV. I will get, and let me de-preview that because it's noisy. I'm going to get now a normal, and that normal will be basically the direction that is perpendicular to that surface at that point. So to display that, just so you get a visual, I'm going to turn on vector display. We're going to use the anchor point for this, and then its normal will be the vector, and you can see that that is perpendicular to that surface. So we're going to use that to give a direction. So all of that was just to get a replacement for this y value. It's not too bad, 4 components, not too bad. So the next thing I need to do is, how do I get it to move in that direction? Well, I'm going to use what's called an amplitude component. The amplitude allows you to assign a vector and to assign a magnitude, a length. So I'm going to grab this, and instead of the t going from this y, I'll have the v go into the t. Alright, so let's de-preview a few things and take a look. So now we have, no matter where this is, we have our louvers being built perpendicular to the form. So I can now edit those. I can get something really curvilicious and funky, and the script works. Alright, great. And you'll notice that I'm also kind of building, and at the very end I'm going to kind of get rid of a lot of the fluff and start to organize. And using these alignment tools, I can really start to get things looking a lot more organized and cleaner. And all of my inputs, whether it's geometry or if it's parameters, I'm going to start labeling appropriately. So this is the depth of louver, and this is number of louvers, and they're all going to be floating here off to the left. So that's where all the inputs, major geometry inputs are, and my major control components are. Alright, good.